I'm Paul Den Hout, your demonstrator extraordinaire. Today's practical is about metallography. It's in the field of metallography. What we're looking at is how to prepare the samples that we have, that we've collected, how to prepare them for examination under a microscope. So what we need to get to is that, which is a polished section. The first thing we need to do is to identify what part of the sample that we have to section, to prepare for a polished section. So that involves some planning. Because the grains and phases inside samples may carry orientation, we'd want to prepare the sections on different planes. So for example, in this one, which you'll remember is from the Sharpie test, we might want to section across like that, we might want to section horizontally like that, and we might want to section vertically like that. And if we're interested in a particular part, perhaps because of deformation, we might even want to prepare that particular surface. So that's the fracture surface from the Sharpie piece. When we've decided how we're going to section our sample, we come to the cutting machine to cut the sections. So the first thing we need to do is to mount it. Now in the cutting machine, that there is the blade that will do the cutting, and this is the bracket that holds the sample in place. So what I'm going to do is to secure the sample now. I position it with enough of the sample protruding so that it can be cut by the blade, and then I tighten the clamp so that now the sample is secure. When that's done, we close the lid and we can start. Press the start button and the saw will go. And then we're ready now. Through the glass, we can move the blade down onto the test piece and cut through it. Once we've identified and cut the sections that we need, we place them on the gadget that will now mount them in an epoxy resin. That's the next step. So we place the sample on the stand here and we lower it. Once it's in the instrument, we add the epoxy resin. This is polyfast. You'll notice by its dark color it contains graphite because it needs to be conducting, especially if we're using these polished sections inside an electron microscope. There we are, and we add it. Make sure that the seal is clear of any material. And then we place the cap in position. We lock it. With the cap locked in position, we're ready to begin. We press the start button. When the machine has gone through the program of heating up, melting the polyfast and then cooling down, we can remove the polished section from the chamber. Remove the lid. And there we have our polished section. You can see the base of the sample. The diameter of the section is 30 millimeters. This thickness is between 10 and 15 millimeters. The next step now is to polish one of the surfaces so that we can look at it under the microscope. Once we've prepared our polished section, we now need to prepare the surface. And that requires grinding and polishing. And for that we have this grinding and polishing machine. The surfaces that do the grinding are sandpaper. Here's an example. We start off with coarse sandpaper, so that would be a low grit number, then move to finer sandpaper, higher grit numbers. Once we've prepared the surface to a degree by grinding the last step would be polishing. And for that we use a felt and add to it a diamond paste. And the diamond paste does the polishing. All of that is done in this machine. And the only thing that has changed is the sandpaper, which sits at the base here, starting with the coarse and going through to the finer. Right, the first thing we need to do is to mount and put in place the sandpaper. So we choose the sandpaper and secure it to the base. Then the bracket that holds the polished section is lowered. The sample is then placed in a slot. It's secured with the lever at the back, and then the start button is pressed. Right, after having pressed start, the machine will run through its program for a period of time. When it's finished, it will come to a stop. We lift the bracket that holds the polished section, change the sandpaper, and then repeat the process. Now that we've finished grinding, we switch over to polishing. So we'll change the sandpaper to polishing felt. We add the diamond paste, a certain amount of it. We lower the bracket that holds the polished section, add the polished section to it, and then press go, and the machine will run through the procedure as it did for grinding. When we've polished our section satisfactorily, in other words, no scratches, we're now ready to begin etching. Our etchant is a ferric chloride solution, and we'll use that together with some fine alumina grinding medium. So what I've done is to put a little etching solution there. It's a medium. So what I'm going to do, and all of this has to be done in under 10 seconds, is to dip that and then rub it for a few seconds and then rush off to the tap and clean it off with water. And there we are. That's now etched and all done in under 10 seconds. Right, this is the final stage. We have our polished section and we mount it on the stage of the microscope. And the first step would be to bring it into focus. This microscope is connected to the computer, and so you're now able to see the microstructure. What you need now to do is to interpret that microstructure and in doing so determine the properties of this material. That concludes this practical.